G'day folks, today I thought I'd go through my June AFL Draft Power Rankings, which is my top 20, which you can find on espn.com.au/AFL. So I've got the link up here if you want to follow it, or I'll leave a link in the description below. But yeah, to go through, I guess, some of the reasons behind why I've made some big moves. So, as I made mention in my previous video, I have a new number one in this year's draft. So, I've got Filippo out of South Australia. And the reason being, you've got a guy who is really a dual position impact player where he's very good through the midfield, but also terrific as a forward. I'd say as a pure midfielder, there are some pure midfielders in this draft that are better, but again, having that dual position capability is very much appealing to me. So you've got the extra height at 192 centimeters. You've got the recent performance, as we can see here. But additionally, we've got a late December birthday. So basically someone who, if he was only just a few days younger, would actually be in next year's draft. So when you've got those taller guys, they tend to have a bit more development going into the future anyway. So with all that understood, and the very best midfielders in the competition, or at least that uber elite type, tend to be those dual position guys where they don't have to just be stationed as midfielders purely. With a Filippo, you can put him forward. So it's a bit like, if I'm to look at the best midfielders today, we've got a Petrarca, we've got a Bont. We can look at the previous generations of Danger. We've got Fife, Ablett. I could go on and on. But basically all those types of names, Dusty as well, not to omit him for Richmond fans out there. But those very best midfielders, they tend to have those forward of centre capabilities. And you can see a bit of a trend with my number two name. And I could have also advertised that I have a new number two as well. But Harry Sheezel, so similar story here, where he's actually known more as a forward, and I've only actually ever seen him in the one game through the midfield, but had that big game through the midfield in the NAB League in his most recent. So, and I've got here the numbers, where you've got 37 disposals, 19 contested, and you can see the numbers there. So basically, he's good through the midfield as well. And again, same story as I'd say with a Filippo, where, look, there's probably a few midfielders that are as pure midfielders better, but again, having those, I guess, special gifts forward of centre, a Sheezel is an incredibly attractive prospect. So with a Sheezel, so he's got a late year birthday, so I believe he's an October birthday. So having that, still being sort of a fairly good height, look, he's not that sort of over 190 type, but he's in those sort of, I guess, mid to high 180s, so that's perfectly fine. But forward of centre, he's a real weapon. So as a pure forward, I would say he's even better than a Filippo. And look, through the midfield, look, there's even possibly the chance that he could be even a better midfielder. So I'm not going to be a prisoner of the moment and say, with a Sheezel after one game against a mediocre NAB League, I guess, opponent, and it's not like it's on a big stage or anything, that necessarily he should be that number one. But look, if he backs it up during the under-18 champs, Sheezel is firmly in that mix for the number one spot. So make sure you watch out for him as well. But big weapon where you've got, whether it's the overhead marking, you've got the ground level gifts, just a special talent around goal as well, and can set up teammates. So you've got all those sorts of weapons there. So really that 1 and 2, I really wanted to go for those mids that are those dual position players, so that really you do get those opportunities to put them in a few spots and not just feel forced to have them as pure mids. You really want to expand that midfield rotation as much as possible to maximize, I guess, the quality of your outfit. So I would imagine my number 1 and 2 would be unique. I don't know anyone else in the country that has Filippo at number 1 at this stage. Most people would have him outside their top 5s, I would imagine, at this stage, and there'd be probably quite a number who would still have him outside the top 10. But I think over the coming weeks we'll probably find that changes a bit, and I think more people will move him up. And I'd say the same of Sheezel, where look, I'm not familiar with anyone who has him number 1 on their board. There could well be some that have him top 5. Look, I'm not familiar with who rates who where, but yeah, for me, certainly I'm a fan, and now you know why. But for the best pure midfielder in this draft, so Will Ashcroft. So the son of Marcus, he's eligible for Brisbane as a father-son if he wants to go there, that is. But yeah, what separates an Ashcroft is I find just the sheer speed and acceleration for him, where he's got all the same ball-winning gifts and ability to accumulate as all the others, but just that sheer burst of acceleration and how he takes on the game and really runs with ball in hand is really something that breaks open games. So that's, I guess, that little separating factor for me with an Ashcroft that puts him ahead. But he is one where coming into the year, look, he was by far and away for me the most advanced, and others I feel are sort of making some ground. So that's my slight pause and hesitation there. So I don't think all things said and done, Ashcroft will necessarily be the best in the draft. But if you're looking for, I guess, that incredibly low risk pick, I think Ashcroft is probably that guy where his floor is incredibly high, and look, he still can be an exceptional footballer. So, yeah, he'll be certainly one that I would be placing a bid on incredibly early, it's fair to say. So Brisbane, assuming again the nomination goes ahead, will have to pay up. So Tom Scully. So for me, I still rate him the best key forward in the draft. Part of it is performance. Part of it is you've got the height and you've got the late year birthday. You've got the rate of improvement. So when you've got all those components that are coming together, that's really appealing to me. And look, when you've got a guy who's basically going for 4 contested marks a game, kicking 5+ goals, even if it's in the SANFL under 18s, well, that's still big time. But why I can't justify having him higher at this stage is there's some flaws in his game. And relatively speaking, he's probably, I'd say, one-dimensional-ish, where he's very much that, I guess, strong marking type, but there are the missing holes. So in terms of what he does by foot, whether it's as a field kick, kicking at goal, look, there's room for improvement. At ground level, while is fine by all means, he's not great. So he's starting to work up the field more, which is sort of showing there's a bit more sort of options with him. But yeah, ultimately, he is someone where he's great at what he's great at, but there's a lot of scope and really need for him to expand his game out further to ensure that he does become that high-end player. So yeah, he's sort of, I guess, that Max King style, but a lot more work needs to be put in for him to get anywhere close to even where King was at that same age and stage, to be realistic. So that's sort of, I guess, what you need to know there. So, and if I'm to give a quick sort of general overarching comment with this draft pool, look, the top end isn't great compared to other years. So that's why you'll probably find my board sort of varies from quite a few others, because I'm not really seeing a lot of upside in a lot of these projected top players. I think they'll be very good, don't get me wrong, but I'm not necessarily seeing that certainty of, I guess, that superstar caliber type. So that's something to sort of be aware of and cognizant of. Wardlaw, why do I like him? Well, contested bull, but also really brings the effort, brings the pressure. Defensively, he's as good as any midfielder in the draft. So wins a high proportion contested. But look, I have found certainly in the NAB League, and part of it's down to role as well, where he hasn't been purely used as a mid all the time, every time. But yeah, look, I want to see him find more of the ball, and additionally, I'd also say I want to see more offensive impact, and also probably a bit more forward of centre, where, look, he's getting forward minutes, but he's not a forward of centre impact guy. So, whereas, like, even if I compare him to, say, an Ashcroft, I feel like I could probably put an Ashcroft forward, and he'd have a bit more of an impact relatively. So, but yeah, look, I'd like to probably see a few more weapons with a Wardlaw, but look, incredibly solid mid who is that sort of inside strong ball winner in there is really going to sort of get the job done, it's fair to say. So genuine pick one contender, but for me, he's just lacking those, I guess, star ingredients for me. More on the offensive side of the ball, and then that sort of, I guess, additional position I'd really like to see him sort of have as well, to be able to say, yeah, he's a good chance to be the best in the draft. I think with a Wardlaw, he's a safe sort of guy where he's going to be a very good footballer, but will he be a great footballer? Look, for me, I've still got that element of pause at this stage. And then with Elijah Saddis, well, he's been racking it up. So you can see with some of the numbers here that I go through. And he's got the explosive run. He's got the offensive weapons, but he is almost like the opposite to a Wardlaw, where with a Wardlaw, you've got all the defensive side. Well, with a Saddis, I haven't really seen the application on that side of the ball. So, obviously, in these reviews that I do for ESPN, I like to keep it really quite positive and really go through their strengths. But I feel for the purposes of this sort of video, I just want to go through, I guess, why I've got players where they are. and I guess sort of give that feel around that and what I'm sort of looking for. So with Asatis, look, he needs to, I guess, further that sort of defensive side. And if he has that with the accumulation and hurt factor, well, that's big time. And with Asatis as well, like, although he's become a really sensational midfielder this year, he's also got that extra versatility to a Wardlaw, where you can put him outside, you could even pop him across halfback, maybe across half forward if you wanted. So I feel like there's probably a few more options in that regard. So fair to say, I think he's going to be a very early pick, as with a Wardlaw, as with an Ashcroft. They could even be sort of those first three or among those first sort of few picked. So I imagine they'll be very popular at the top end of most people's draft boards. Elijah Hewitt, look, he's been playing waffle at league level, and it's a hard level to dominate, which is, I guess, the challenge there. But to his credit, though, he has fit in and been able to contribute and play a part. So, but yeah, one of the really top-end midfielders of the draft, and had a sensational finish to last year. So I'll really be looking for some strong play during the under-18 champs, and yeah, we'll see, I guess, how he compares to some of those top-end Victorian midfielders. That'll be really interesting to watch. And look, if he compares favourably, well, maybe I can sort of move him back up ahead of a few of them. But look, at this stage, based on sort of what I've seen of him both this year and last year as well, to an extent, though I loved him, what he was doing at the very tail end of last year, I think this is probably around the right spot for him at this point. Whereas just behind, but that top 7 I really like quite a lot. Harry Lemmy, look, it's just been a case of, in the games he's played, he hasn't performed to the level I'd hoped, where I was really looking for a greater level of progression this year, which I'm yet to see from him. So, yeah, look, he's one of those sort of, I guess, high work rate key forwards, and he'll just keep leading up at the footy. But, yeah, I just want to sort of see him, I guess, start dominating, doing a bit more at Sandford League level when he gets those opportunities. But, yeah, he just needs to sort of, I guess, take a game by the scruff of the neck and, yeah, just really start dominating against even competition of his age, ultimately, to really feel compelled to have him a little bit higher than I do. So with a Lemmy, look, probably I'd imagine most people would rate him a little bit higher than I do, but yeah, I'll be looking for a big under-18 championships from him, or there's, I guess, the risk that he could be dropping a few more spots. But looks a pretty safe first rounder at this stage, assuming sort of he plays reasonable footy at least during the second half of the year. But yeah, probably a key forward it's fair to say that I've lost quite a bit of confidence in, because at the start of the year, I thought he was a genuine pick 1 contender, but I don't think he really deserves to be in the mix at this stage based on, I guess, what he's been doing and just at least comparatively, I would say. Kobe Ryan, really good mid, and he's been playing really well in the Sandful against league competitions. So had the one game in the reserves, dominated, probably got 30 disposals or something there. Went to league level, had a few good games, and yeah, look, he's really held his own there. So really good sign, and shows that, yeah, look, you could probably stick him in at AFL level next year and he could probably play a role. So really good competitive mid. So good spot for him. At Buzzlinger, look, he's been really good in the Waffle Colts. He has debuted at league level, so yeah, look, if he starts sort of, I guess, playing really good footy at league level and has a good under-18 champs, he's one that very well could move quite a way up my draft board. So, but certainly Waffle Colts, so the under-18s in WA, he's been terrific. So, and I've got here, so really good interceptor and uses it really well. So, that's a great foundation to be working from ultimately for a key defender. Broadbent, best ruck prospect in this draft, it's fair to say. I probably would have liked to have seen more improvement from him this year and really see him start dominating games. Get a few Waffle League games this year would be nice to see. But yeah, probably one that hopefully during the second half of the year, if he can put together some strong performances and has a good under-18 champs, he does have the opportunity to potentially sort of move up my draft board a little bit. So certainly one to watch for if you're after a top-end ruck prospect this year. Adam D'Aloia, look, racks up the ball every game, huge contested totals, huge tackle numbers. If I was to have a critique, I would say that oftentimes I actually find him on the quiet side, which is unusual for someone that, I guess, racks up huge amounts of contested footy in particular. But yeah, it's just sort of he's in and under, in close. You don't always notice him on every play necessarily, as you do with some of the other more influential inside mids. He has been showing glimpses forward of centre, which has been a real positive there as well. So to me, he feels like a fairly safe pick, given, I guess, how he performs and wins such a high proportion contested. That's, I guess, a component that so regularly translates on such a high level. So, yeah, he's one that I'm pretty sure will remain in the top 20 for the year, it's fair to say, given the performances he has on the board. And I'm sure he'll have a very strong under 18 champs, given how advanced his play is. But does he have the upside of a few other prospects? Don't know. Just because he's already been so advanced, even going back last year, he was putting up some big numbers and having some huge games, statistically at least. Will Dowling, look, his drop is really just a case of others have, I guess, really picked up. And look, probably in recent weeks he has dropped back a tiny bit. But yeah, really good midfielder from SA. And look, one that I'll certainly be watching during the champs to see whether his play stacks up with a lot of the top end, particularly Victorian midfielders. But yeah, I've really liked his play. And as I've got here, he gets forward to centre and he can hit the scoreboard as well as racking it up. So that's always a huge positive when they're doing that. So fair to say I'm a fan, and there's quite a few that I've spoken to who have him outside their first round. But yeah, look, at this stage, I quite like him inside my top 15, honestly. It'll take a few players really sort of taking steps to, I guess, dislodge him from certainly my top 20. So Isaac Keeler, look, is someone where a lot of the time he, I guess, shows athletic attributes, has really impressive moments where he just sort of sticks out. He's been leading up the ground really well this year, but I'd like to see probably a bit more scoreboard impact, a bit more, I guess, close to goal impact. Overhead, I find sometimes that, look, he can probably drop a few balls that he should take. So I might need to make some amendments here in terms of the strong hands overhead, particularly from a couple of the recent games I've seen of him. But yeah, look, just a really sort of athletic type. You've got sort of, I guess, Paddy Ryder, Buddy-esque vibes, I guess, there, where, look, he can play forward, he can push through the ruck as well. So you've got those sort of options there. But yeah, look, really talented player, but probably hasn't taken that step that I was really hoping for this year. I was hoping if he's playing in the under 18s, he'd be 2 to 3 goal sort of range. So even if he is getting those minutes further afield. So yeah, it's sort of a rough field there. But yes, if he, say, dropped into the second round, I'd be pretty happy to have him, assuming he continues to show some progress over the second half of the year. Nick Madden, he's one of those guys where every time I watch him, he just influences the game. So big body, you've got here 204 centimeter, 112 keg. So big lad, and as I've got here, throws his weight around. So that's what he does. So he's that, I guess, if you want to call it Braden Pruce, Shane Mumford style, I guess, ruck. So it's that Mumford style, but obviously he's quite a bit taller. So yeah, exciting player, and he can also push forward and take some strong grabs as well. So not perfect, huge body, so we'll need to lean down and get that AFL conditioning. But yeah, he has an impact on games. So that's the really exciting part. And it'll be interesting to see with that sort of time and development the player he can become. But yeah, I'm quite optimistic. And look, he could even be someone I'd consider moving ahead of the much more heavily favoured Broadbent. So with a Madden, again, probably another where I don't know anyone who necessarily has him inside their first round at this stage. But again, I'm very comfortable having him inside my top 20. I'm really bullish, and every time I see him is just about the most influential, if not the most influential in the field. So for me, that really sort of, I guess, stands out, even if he is that, I guess, man-child compared to all his, I guess, counterparts in the under 18s. Braden George. So for those of you who read this profile, look, you've got, I guess, someone where I'm really optimistic about the attributes he's got, but look, he's just not finding enough of the footy. That's the problem. So he can have games where he could get 5 or less disposals, basically. So like that's sort of the feel to his game, where he just doesn't always find and win enough of the footy. But in terms of attributes, and he does have that contested side as well, so really he should be winning and finding a lot more of it. But yeah, if ever he gets that side of it, well, you're looking at someone who's really going to be an awfully damaging player. So if we're looking at George as someone where he was getting, let's call it 20, 25 disposals a game, well, you'd be looking at a number one prospect right here. So, and look, he has been playing forward. I'd really like to see him go through the midfield and I guess see what he can do through there as a ball winner and see, even if he's sort of rotating forward, I'd really like to see what those capabilities are. So he could be that, whether it's a Cam Rayner equivalent in this draft or whatever you want to call it, he's got that sort of game where he's just so influential, but he does need to start finding more of the footy to really, I guess, have that regular impact. Anthony Mankara, look, really athletic forward, Essendon Next Gen Academy. Just such an exciting player, but and I should have also mentioned with Keeler his Adelaide Next Gen Academy, but a bid would have to be outside the top 40, and it's the same here. So again, Next Gen Academy, I can't see a bid coming after 40. It's just not going to happen. He's probably a first round pick, could be a second rounder, but just such a talented player. And in that AFL Academy game, that last quarter in particular, this guy was the standout. So just had a number of really exciting moments. If we're looking for a pure, I guess you can probably call him more medium sort of forward. Just really exciting, strong overhead, just very lively and influential, and feels like he's really going to, I guess, make something happen whenever he has the footy. So yeah, one that I'm really quite bullish based on recent viewings. So an NT boy, but he's playing in the sand for those that are wondering. So he'll represent the Allies during the under-18 champs, given his NT. Lewis Hayes, so you've got the brother of Sam, so he's not as tall. So as I've got here is a 197, but he's playing in defence. So he's a December birthday, and he's racking up numbers, which is great. But yeah, look, I find a lot of it is, relatively speaking, empty possessions. Really clean, reliable user, can intercept well. But yeah, look, in terms of one-on-one capabilities, needs to get stronger. Can improve that defensive side quite a way still. Yeah, I just like mostly to really see, I guess, him become stronger, more dominant, more influential by position. If we start seeing those components come together and him really imposing himself quite a bit more on games, that's when a Hayes could really shoot up this draft board. So Jai Clark, look, he's got a lot of fans and he could be a top 10 pick at the end of the day. I find he can be relatively hot and cold, where he's had some huge games this year. So like, I'm talking like nearing, I don't know, well, I've got the numbers here, but like you can have your 30 possession games and he's getting his 15 contested possessions. So that's awesome stuff. You've got that inside-outside blend. So yeah, look, he's a really good player, but I'd like to see him, I guess, do it on the big stage against good teams. So if he performs during the under-18 champs, it's fair to say he's likely to be shooting up this draft board. But yeah, look, unfortunately, a lot of the better games that he's played, I haven't yet gotten around to seeing, so he could well be someone that I move up quite a way up my board. So certainly a player there. But for the most controversial of this, and it sort of, I guess, makes me smile in seeing the name there, but Casey Voss. So he's someone I flagged, this was prior to the mid-season draft, as someone where if he goes undrafted during the mid-season draft, this guy's in my top 20, and I'm standing by that. He's a top 20 player in this year's draft as we speak. So look, during the under-18 champs, there might be sort of a few, could be 5 or 6, whatever the number is, that could move well past him, but still incredibly draftable. And I've made this comment really on a number of different platforms, but he's an any team best 22 player. Name a team and I can tell you who he plays in front of. So you name the back 6, I'll tell you who Casey Voss should be playing ahead of. So for me, just looking at whether it's a Geelong, well, other than a Tom Stewart of the general defenders, well, who's better than Casey Voss? If we look at whether it's a North Melbourne, well, even if you've got your veterans, like whether it's Aaron Hall, let's say you chuck a Jack Zeeble back, maybe you've got a Luke McDonald back, well, Casey Voss fits with those guys. There's no one else that would be anywhere close to a Casey Voss. So it doesn't matter what team you're looking at. I could look at a Melbourne, same story. I'm sticking Casey Voss in that best 22. Even the very best teams, I can fit Casey Voss in the best 22. And we're not looking at an old guy. He's a 21-year-old. So he won his best and fairest. He was in the Sandful Team of the Year. In the Sandful Waffle match, he was best on ground. So I've got the numbers here. So you've got 29 disposals, 15 marks. This is against the Waffle he was doing this. So it wasn't against just a bunch of mediocre state leaguers. The guys who are playing in this sort of game, they're pretty well AFL standard players just about. So if you're doing that against as close to AFL competition as you can, well, hey, what else is there to do? So he's an incredible interceptor. He's got the ball use out of defense. He's a really competitive defensive player as well. So he actually started out more as that, I guess, defensive-minded defender. So he already had those components, and then he's just sort of, I guess, stacked on the rebounding capabilities, the intercepting capabilities, and he's become an incredibly influential and consistent player. So for me, it's absolutely ridiculous that he got overlooked during the mid-season draft, and as a result, well, hey, given my perspective on his play and how good he is, well, he deserves his spot inside my top 20. So, yeah, fair to say that's my position. And I can't see him, unless he really has a terrible second half of the year, I cannot see a single reason why he would drop outside my top 30. I just can't see a reason, because he's on that level. And the unfortunate thing with the state leagues is that you've got state leaguers who, frankly, are best 22 just about any team quality, and you've got some of them who aren't even nominating for drafts anymore. So whether you're going back to when Tim Kelly was drafted with the 24th pick in, I think it was 2017, well, you had Hayden Sloyth, who was actually the Sandover medalist as the best player in the Waffle. So when that sort of thing's happening, and you've got Sloyth, who really at that time was the better player, same age, well, it's ridiculous. You've got a Jai Bolton in the same competition who's in that same category as well at that time. And look, with Kelly, once he joined Geelong, he did continue to improve, to his credit. And in the year he got drafted, huge breakout year again. But like, when you've got those caliber of players that are missing out, well, there's so much quality left in the state leagues, it's not funny. We saw it during the preseason supplemental period. We've got the likes of a Jack Hayes, who gets drafted out of the Sandful as a 25-year-old. He never got a look during the national or rookie drafts, but didn't get a look during the mid-season draft, didn't get a look at any stage. But you've got one of those players who gets drafted then, and we've seen the success of so many players during the preseason supplemental period who got overlooked during the drafts. So it's incredibly obvious that there's still a heap of talent in the state leagues. And the problem is, if you look at the mid-season draft, you've got all these clubs drafting for potential, where they're picking guys who, look, they've got capabilities and they've got attributes, but so many of them are still, I guess, your development projects who do need that little bit of extra time. Well, in whether it's the Sandful, the Waffle, the VFL, you've got established players who on AFL teams are best 22 caliber. So I really wanted to drive that point home and basically say that, look, if AFL clubs are passing on Casey Voss, they're outright wrong for doing that. So because they're just not understanding that this guy is an any team best 22 player. So, and if he's picked up at the end of the year, well, hey, I'm backing him to earn that best 22 spot for round one the following year. So that's the caliber of his play. Thanks for watching, everyone, and if you enjoyed this video, and particularly my rant at the end, well, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future updates. I'd be interested to hear anyone who has been watching the state leagues this year, hopefully with the AFL website showing all the VFL games and some of the Waffle games. Hopefully you've been watching some of them, but yeah, I'd be interested to hear some of the names you've been noticing in the state leagues who are of AFL quality and would be a best 22 player on a particular list. I'd be really interested to hear some of the names, because ultimately I feel like the best state leaguers around the nation, well, they don't really get enough press and enough recognition for, in quite a number of cases actually, being AFL caliber pieces outside AFL lists. And of course, with the under 18 champs coming up, well, if you've got any questions about any of the best under 18 prospects from around the country, well, again, let me know in the comment section below who are some of the players you'd like some more info on, or if you've got an opinion on any of the players or what you'd like, I guess, to know, I guess, my thoughts and views, well, again, hit me up in the comment section below. But anyway, folks, see you in the next video.